ANC Deputy Secretary General Durarte, together with the head of the Electoral Committee, former Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe, are briefing the media on the party's candidate selection process for the local government elections. The press briefing is taking place virtually. Let's deep into the proceedings.
So I will cover in brief those areas which you do have the statement. One of the things that concerned us a great deal was that the vaccine program was interrupted by the violence that took place. It is on track now. We saw today that more than 6 million people have now been vaccinated. More vaccines have arrived, and we're quite happy that the process is ongoing now. And we want to encourage people who have not as yet been vaccinated not to hesitate. We do need to achieve herd immunity. The only way we will all be safe is if we have enough people who have been vaccinated and the threat of infection is lowered. And we need to get to that point. And we will get to that point once everyone is vaccinated. We also discussed the question of what we call vaccine imperialism, and the ANC-led government is still engaging with Europe as well, with European countries as well as other countries for cooperation in terms of the vaccine product. And as you know, we heard that we will also be producing vaccines here in South Africa, and that makes a great deal of difference to our constituency and our people. We condemn the violence that took place in looting and the loss of life that took place in an unprecedented manner in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. What we cannot avoid telling you is that we watched as SMSs were rolling out and Facebook and other places were discussing where the violence would take place. And indeed, it happened where the faceless people said it would happen. And so to deny that it was planned, it was orchestrated is futile. It is best that we get on with the task of understanding the core reasons for that. And while we also agree that the trigger may have been the incarceration of Comrade Zuma, which is unfortunate, and yet at the same time, it was a malicious attempt to undermine our democracy, as well as to create a spate of rolling mass action that would include, amongst other things, which has happened, a rise of vigilantism in some areas, which we find absolutely unacceptable, and a rise in racial tensions in KwaZulu-Natal. Our concern is that such a plan has been thwarted, so it has failed. But it does not mean that the people who are planning are not continuing to plan and may have softened their approach, but they're certainly not stopping what they're trying to do. It's also disingenuous to make the former president of the country a scapegoat and use his name, I beg your pardon, in this manner. We are hoping that very soon the law enforcement agencies will arrest the planners and the people who instigate violence in this manner and concentrate on what they've instigated, not just the 6 or 7 thus far that have appeared in court. Yesterday, another SMS came out. We are studying it. We understand that it is a call for a second phase of protests, and hopefully the planners will now understand that it cannot continue in the manner that they wish to. Democracy has opened its doors for people to assemble and to air their views. Our country has never stopped people from freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, but what we cannot allow is for people to instigate violence. This violence has damaged local economic local economies has caused huge job losses and loss of life. So in the statement, we refer to that, and we call on our communities and thank them for the people's power that did kick in and began to protect local economies. We must also say that our security services, when they did arrive, were able to stem any further erosion and violence. However, it became very clear that it was planned to stop food, to create food shortages by the shutting down of the N3 and also burning of warehouses where food was stored. So we want to just be very clear that we condemn it, we do not accept it, and we will continue to mobilize our communities to resist it. We also discussed Women's Month, and again wish to emphasize that Women's Month is to commemorate a historic contribution of women in the struggle for our country, for our liberation. And at the moment, our struggle is different. It is for the total emancipation of women and the inclusion of women in all facets of our democracy and our society. There'll be a number of events that are being led by both the ANC in conjunction with the ANC Women's League that will take place throughout the month of August. And we are hoping that many, many women will participate in the webinars and in all the events that the Women's League, including the Umanyano Thursday sessions, which are very, very successful and discuss a range of issues, primarily gender-based violence and femicide. Our national youth task team is doing well. They've begun to develop the base of the Youth League. They are beginning to set the branches straight and the regions straight, and we hope that they will be able to go to their conference in November this year. On local government elections, colleagues and comrades, we are planning right now as if the elections will take place on the 27th of October. It is very tight. Our major concern is that an election must be free and fair, and that political parties must have an ability to properly explain their manifestos to the electorate and present their candidates in a well-organized manner. 80% of our branches have elected their candidates, but have not concluded the community meetings where the candidates are presented and where the communities can participate in the selection of an ANC person who will represent them as a candidate in the local government election. I'm sure that Comrade Kgalema will speak more on this matter. We also will be presenting we will be joining in the Constitutional Court request for the elections to be postponed to February in terms of the recommendations of the Moseneke report. We will have an NEC Lekgotla in August from the 21st to the 23rd. We will focus primarily on COVID-19, the pandemic itself, economic reconstruction and recovery. We'll talk at length about local government and the capacity of the state, as well as climate change and a just transition. I can also inform you that the NEC took a decision that we will interview all candidates that are presented by our structures for mayoral positions. For instance, we have already interviewed 3 people last night for the mayoral position of Johannesburg. We will follow through with Mangaung, and there are a few others currently that need to replace their mayors. We took note of the appeal to the High Court by the Secretary General against the suspension. We had an engagement with Sinn Féin, a sister party of the ANC, to discuss the unification of Ireland and our support to Sinn Féin in their quest for that to happen. I lastly want to say that we support scientific sourcing, tracing, and efforts to promote global cooperation in the containing of the COVID-19 pandemic, and oppose the politicization of scientific matters and the stigmatization of labeling viruses by geographic reference, as has been done to China. And if you recall, one of the strains was called a strain that came from South Africa, and it continues that way. This pandemic is moving around and the virus does mutate. We also discussed briefly the AU's decision to provide the AU Secretariat's decision to grant Israel observer status, and we have communicated our dismay to our government and asked them to convey that to the African Union, and we reaffirm the ANC's commitment to solidarity with the people of Palestine. Thank you very much, colleagues and comrades.
DSG, are you not moving to the next one on councillor candidate selection process, the one that speaks to the Electoral Committee?
I thought Comrade Kgalema was dealing with that, but I can just briefly say that we've decided, Comrade Kgalema, at the at the NWC, that all our structures need to complete the process of candidate selection, including and up to community meetings by the end of August. We, irrespective of whether the date is going to be changed by the Concourt or not, that is our decision. Thank you very much, Comrade.
Thank you. No, thanks, and over to you, Comrade DP.
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade GSG and Comrade Pule, and the members of the Fourth Estate who are present. Good morning. I have been tasked to chair the Electoral Committee, which was established by the National Executive Committee in accordance with a resolution of the 52nd National Elective Conference of the ANC. The committee is made up of 8 members. And if I may, the members of the committee are Mrs. Dimpohani, Mrs. Nkelen Tingana, Ms. Loretta Jacobus, Ms. Nora Fakude, Ms. Busi Chwete, Ms. Theo Steele, and Amos Masondo, and myself. So there's 8 of us, and we have had to hit the ground running. Our mandate primarily is to come up with rules that would guide the selection of public representatives, that is candidates, the nomination from branch general members meetings, and also to ensure that because this is a national structure, the Electoral Committee is a national structure, and in each province, we had to establish a provincial list committee. And the provincial list committees are composed of those members of the African National Congress who do not have the ambition of availing themselves for election into any position, either of leadership or as public representatives. And we've also in each region established a regional interviewing and vetting panel, specifically to interview and vet those who have been nominated as candidates. And these regional vetting and interviewing panels are made up of people, South Africans, who have either experience and skills that are relevant to government, particularly at the third tier of local government. And so the rules allow for branches in their general members meeting to nominate 4 candidates candidates for the ward councillor position, and also to nominate those who will go on the PR list. And the rules then specify that those 4 names should be presented to a community meeting in that specific ward. And if the community, and so the 4 nominees would be given an opportunity to present their credentials, so to speak, to the community. And if the community is not happy with all of them or any of them, the community has the opportunity to nominate whomsoever who happens to be a registered voter in that specific ward, and in whom the community has confidence that he or she would serve them well as a councillor. And from that point, if there are any objections or appeals relating to breach of procedures and or any of the rules laid out by the Electoral Committee, that such an appeal would have to be made within 48 hours of the incident taking place, which leaves any member or group of members aggrieved by that omission or commission. And so the appeal is then handled by the Provincial List Committee. And if the determination of the Provincial List Committee is still not to the satisfaction of the appellants, those appellants have the opportunity to appeal to the Electoral Committee at national level. And so already the Electoral Committee and the PLCs have been at work and have had to handle a number of appeals and make determinations, because we are working within very tight timelines. Yes, as the DSG has already indicated, we are working on the understanding that the proclaimed date for local government elections is the 27th of October, and that therefore, working backwards, we've got to register all of our candidates by the 23rd of August. And so, once again, working backwards, all branches were given the deadline of the 4th of August, which is yesterday already, and in other words, to complete their processes. And that by the 9th of August, they should have also completed the community meetings. Following that, in each province, there will be an extended Provincial Executive Committee meeting, which would look at the outcomes of these processes. And by the 14th, all provincial executive committees are expected to have completed this work, which would then culminate in an extended National Executive Committee meeting where was scheduled for the 21st of August. So you can see that this is a very compacted program, and of course, precisely because of that, there are lots of appeals and objections, and the Electoral Committee is determined to ensure that there's no cutting of corners, that processes are followed to the letter, and the nominations are conducted fairly and openly and democratically. The important point here is that the according to the rules, the branch nomination is not final. It becomes final once the community has also looked at the list of those nominees and interacted with them, and the community has the right to nominate whomsoever they feel would represent them well. So that's, in a nutshell, the work of the Electoral Committee, and that's where we are today. Yes. Thank you, colleagues and Comrade Pule. If there are questions, we'll deal with questions here.
No, thanks, DP. I'm now going to invite members of the media to ask questions on the two presentations, both on the outcomes of the MWC and on the councillor candidate selection process that Comrade Kgalema is leading as the head of the Electoral Committee. We've got two hands, one Natasha Lizeka. Yeah, those are the only hands that I can see for now. Pule Treaty. Can we just take all hands so that we... And then Tando Maeko, Business Day. Gavin Wattles, ENCA.
Zianda.
Zianda. So I take it that these are the only hands we have.
Pule also.
Yeah, Litriti.
Yes. Your namesake, Pule, I think it's present up as well.
Yeah. So those are, it looks like those are the only hands we have. Natasha, you may start.
Thank you very much. It's Natasha Puri here from SABC News. I heard Mr. Motlanthe there just speaking about the vetting process. I just want to know what happens to the candidates who face criminal charges. Will they be excluded from this process? Another one, I just need a clarity. It's a clarity-seeking question. How many branches have set? Is it 80% of the branches? And could you also have the date of the NGC, as the NWC has resolved to hold one? Just furthermore, for Ms. Durarte, did I hear you properly when you said that the ANC will be joining the IEC's application, the urgent application to have the local government elections deferred to next year, sometime in February? Thank you.
Yeah, we can just follow in that order. All those that have raised their hands, Lizeka, Pule, Tando, Gavin.
Thank you. This is Lizeka from Mail and Guardian. DSG, what I wanted to find out from you, you speak about a coordinated effort effort of insurrection. I'm wondering, when it comes to the Phoenix massacre, does the ANC know who's responsible in terms of its own members? Because we've heard that some of the people who were responsible for this massacre were ANC members. Do you have any idea who might have been a party to this, to the massacre in Phoenix? And in terms of the candidate selections, you did say that Johannesburg, you had interviews of mayoral candidates in Johannesburg. We heard that Mangaung candidates were meant to undergo the same interviewing process last night, but this was postponed. Can you share the reasons for the postponement? And a third question is around the reshuffle, DSG. There's obviously you'll say that this is a prerogative of the president, but in many instances, the president does consult with the top six on a reshuffle. The country has been anticipating that there will be a reshuffle. We just wanted to know if you, as the top six, have had discussions around who will be reshuffled and whether there will be a reshuffle, and what were the sentiments of the top six, if there were any talks with the president around this. Thank you.
All right, DP Puleli Treaty Jones from the News 24 political desk. Firstly, on the ANC Johannesburg mayor issue that's been going on for a while, do we at least have a date of when a mayoral candidate will be selected to actually head the position? As we've also seen now, opposition parties like the DA threatening to go to the MEC for Kokta to actually escalate the matter further. And then maybe just for the DSG on the insurrection matter. DSG, did you also discuss the potential threats that may be coming again as a revival of this unrest, as we've also seen the likes of Comrade Karl Niehaus and others threatening rather to actually, brew another unrest in the name of the Free Jacob Zuma campaign? And then just lastly, has there also been an update on the salary payments for the staffers at the ANC, as we've been sent screenshots of some members within the organization threatening to down tools once again, saying they'll disrupt all ANC programs? Thank you.
Morning all, my name is Thando Mayeko from the Business Day. I'd like to ask, apart from Karl Niehaus, has the ANC instituted any disciplinary proceedings against his members who have been arrested, charged and appeared in court for the unrest that occurred in Gauteng and KZN in July? If so, please provide the charges that have been put before the members and the number of members in the party who are facing the charges. Also, has the party instituted its own investigations into the unrest in the provinces, particularly the involvement of its members? If so, when are the investigations expected to conclude? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good morning. It's Govin Whittles here from ENCA. A few questions from my side. Mr. Durarte, you said that the ANC has seen an SMS which details the second phase of planned unrest. I wanted to see if you could give us more information about that SMS. What is the second phase that the ANC has information about? Secondly, has the NWC received any report on whether ANC members have been arrested for instigating looting or violence, and which action, if any action, has been taken against ANC members who may have been arrested? Then the candidate selections. Did the former President Motlanthe say that the ANC will allow communities to nominate any registered voter to stand on behalf of the ANC as a candidate, or does that person have to be an ANC member? And if you could elaborate there. On the Concord decision, I don't know whether you'd be able to comment on this, as you've indicated the ANC will join the IEC, but what is your view on the IEC going to the Constitutional Court directly and accepting it as a fait accompli that the amendment of the Constitution would not be able to take place as is required for the postponement of such elections? Finally, has the ANC or the NWC discussed the position of Daniel Caesar, the Limpopo treasurer, who has been charged in court? Has he indicated whether he will step aside? If not, has the ANC written any letter to him asking him to step aside? Thank you.
Thanks for the questions. That was the last one. Please put your hand down, Gavin. Gavin, you can put your hand down. That was the last hand. And I'm going to hand over to the DSG and the head committee to answer the questions that have been asked. Over to you, DSG.
Thank you very much, Pule. Firstly, let me advise you that there's no firm decision to hold an NGC. What there is a firm decision about is to prepare for the policy conference in July of next year. We hope that we may be able to hold an NGC in between, although our constitution does not compel us to do so. It gives us a bit of a leeway. We'll do our best, given COVID conditions, as well as the workload that we currently have. Then the issue of the joining of the IEC application, yes, we have decided to do so. We have developed our affidavits in view of the fact that we are an interested party, and we're interested on the basis that the electorate does need to have a fair time to question candidates beyond what the ANC's processes are doing. Candidates, we have to take our manifesto to the ground. We have to do it properly, and we have to have an assurance that the elections will be free and fair, and that we will not be hampered by yet another wave of COVID. So we are in agreement with the Moseneke proposals, but we did ask, and we have asked through the political party liaison officials that we send there, that our preference would have been April, to give us a clear period for campaigning to take place. And our understanding is that a number of other political parties made the same submission. Why go straight? Do we accept that they go straight to the ConCourt? Yes, of course. The IEC has no other alternative but to do so, to take the matter to the ConCourt, where the arbiter is the ConCourt on this matter, and to take a definitive decision. On the issue of coordinated efforts and also identifying people, all the SMSs that we have received over the last couple of weeks and months and so on, these have been made available to law enforcement officials. They be numbers. All we would have is numbers, not a name, as everybody knows, including utterances made by ANC members that we're aware of are definitely members of the ANC. On the latter part, yes, we are in the process of developing charges. And as you all know, I never share what's in a charge sheet. That's not fair. I think it's not a fair question to ask. And people have rights, and they have a right to know what's in the charge sheet in terms of the ANC's internal processes. And they also have 2 weeks from the date they receive the charge sheet to respond. Is it also fair for me to tell you who we've sent charges to? No, not at this stage. Because what that would inspire is a media discussion on whether they're guilty or innocent. We don't want that. We want it to be fair, we want it to be complete, and we want it to be clear that there's no influence against the person by any outsider, but clear that those people would also have a right to bring witnesses and to defend themselves. However, we will not interfere in any of the state agencies who are taking action against people in terms of that. Not all the people who are instigators are members of the ANC. We've ascertained that. So it's it's not entirely correct. We received a copy of a press release by the Free the Jacob Zuma campaign, which was put out yesterday. In that campaign, there is an argument and a view that it was not planned, and so on and so forth. We disagree with respect because it was planned. You cannot have a WhatsApp group discussing 12 areas that must be attacked, and those very same 12 geographic districts are indeed attacked. So that's primarily some of the issues that have been handed over, and the ANC is very clear that we are not tolerant of this kind of behavior. On the issue of our really reshuffle. I don't know what's in the head of the President of the Republic, frankly speaking. We've not been called to come for the President to share his thoughts with us. If he calls us, we'll go. But at this point in time, there's nothing to share with you, except to say that we hear from you that there's buzz around reshuffling and so on, and we'll wait and see. If it happens, then we'll also know when you know. We concluded the matter of the Joburg mayoral candidate last night, and the Gauteng Provincial Executive Committee, together with the REC, today will discuss our recommendations. I do not think I should be telling you what those recommendations are. They will pronounce. They've asked to be able to pronounce very urgently, and we've agreed with them. On Mangaung, the postponement really was occasioned by a proposal that we have made to the Free State for them to consider. And we probably will do that in the early part of next week, immediately after the long weekend. There's no agenda there. It's just process. We have to do it properly. Then, Gavin, it's a press statement. I'm sure you have it. It was issued by Carl Niehaus yesterday. Okay, then Concord, I've answered. I think I've answered all the question. On Danny Masiza, yes, the Provincial Executive Committee of Limpopo has written to Comrade Masiza, and he has been asked to step aside. Thank you very much, colleagues.
All right.
The salary and wage issue. Our staff have been paid, and we are in close contact with the staff liaison committee. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow to discuss further their demands, and it is an internal labor action matter. Yes, the staff have a right to complain, and we're not going to deny them that right. If they send out messages, that's fine. It's part of what happens when there is a problem. As I said to you before, we do have a cash flow crisis. We are not denying that. It is occasioned primarily by the fact that the Party Political Funding Act has taken away from us. Many of our funders are not very happy to have to make statements about their funding to the ANC, and that has created a crisis for us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Comrade DSG. I think I've got 2 or 3 questions to respond to. The branches that have completed their BGMs are about 3,200. So there's close to 800 that are still outstanding to complete the BGM processes. As I said, their deadline was yesterday already by the 4th of August, and all branches are supposed to complete their community processes by the 9th of August. So these are very tight timelines. And anyone who faces criminal charges or any other allegations of, wrongdoings would fail the test in the interviewing and vetting panel processes. So, yeah, the whole rationale behind these rules is to ensure that we end up with candidates who will be without any reproach, and candidates who would add value, who would bring either experience or expertise to the local sphere of government. Yes, the community nomination, it's where the nomination process is finalized. And if, as I said, the community feels that the 4 that come from the branch are not equal to the task and do not enjoy the confidence of the community is free to nominate whomsoever. If that person who commands the respect and confidence of the community happens not to be a member of the African National Congress, they are then given the latitude to join and take up membership of the African National Congress. Of course, some of them would be even members of trade unions affiliated to COSATU or card-carrying members of the South African Communist Party. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, these were the 3 questions that were directed at me. Thank you. There are fresh hands, Kule.
Yes, there's Karin, Lizega, and Christian. I saw that there were also some questions on the chat board. Or they're just asking how many branches have convened. Is it 80%?
Yeah, it's about 3,200, the ballpark figure.
Okay. So that percentage-wise, we could say, it goes to almost that number.
It's about 80%.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask the fresh hands to now come in that order. Karin, Lizega, Christian, and Gavin and Lizega must be having some follow-up questions. We've got 4 hands. Okay. Can we shoot?
Yeah.
Hi, Pule. It's Karin du Plessis, freelance journalist. I have a question. I'm not sure. I came in a little bit late. Not sure if it was answered, but it's just a quick question. These lists of candidates that are supposed to be in on the 23rd of August, should the election be postponed, will you go with the same list or will there have to be a new list process? I just wanted to check if this list will stand for February as well.
Okay.
Lisa again from the Mail and Guardian. DSG, I was speaking to one of your staff members, and the person tells me that only June salaries were paid and that some people in provinces like the Northwest are still unpaid. Can you share what about those July salaries? When do you intend to pay them? The guidelines, former President, yes. The guidelines state that council candidate selection indicates that disputes may be lodged until the last week before the PEC extended meetings. Has this changed? Is this still the same? And when it comes to candidate selections, you say that you're consulting with communities, but how has this process been going given that we are under strict COVID guidelines, which don't permit for people over 50 to be gathered? Does that not limit the scope of participation with communities? And DSG, in terms of the phase 2 that you spoke of, there was ammunition which was stolen in Durban, and recently the police station in the Northwest where people broke in and stole rifles. Are you concerned that this missing ammunition, might be used as an offensive against the state in this phase 2? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christian du Plessis from Netwerk 24. My question is also directed to the DSG, and it also pertains to the second wave. DSG, can you provide a little more detail about this SMS that was received and whether the ANC sees this as a real threat to the security of the nation, and also whether the ANC thinks whether there is indeed a real risk for a second wave of violence and why? Thank you.
Thank you. Governor Whittles once again from ENCA. Mr. Durarte, I would just like to get some clarity around the ANC's view on the cabinet reshuffle. You've said here that you're not aware of it and that you'll hear of it when we know of it. But to which extent does the ANC then influence the changes in the cabinet, and where are the public supposed to go when they're calling for changes in the cabinet? Is that completely left to the president? Because the president is not elected by South Africans, it's the ANC that's elected. And has the ANC not called for changes to be made in the cabinet based on the performance of the ministers in the cabinet? To which degree is the ANC controlling those changes, or is that just being left to the president?
DSG, I don't know if I'm in the position to ask a question, but Pule, once again, according to what we know internally inside the ANC DSG, is that there's been calls for the reshuffling of the security cluster, especially in relation to how they dealt with the recent unrest that plagued KZN and Gauteng. But furthermore, that the intelligence was amongst one of those cabinets that was said there has to be change and minister reshuffled. Are you aware about this as well, DSG, and has there been talk around it as well? Thank you.
Yeah, those were all the hands we had. Christian forgot to put his hand down. So members of the media, once you are done with your question, please put your hand down. Christian, your hand is still up. Put it down in the same way that you put it up. Can we ask the DSG and DP to answer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Should I go first?
Let Kgalema take a first bite.
Yeah, I have fewer questions, Comrade DSG, to deal with. Karin, the lists that we are preparing to register with the IEC by the 23rd of this month will stand, because we are preparing as though the elections will be held on the 27th of October. And where there's been a perhaps deviation and or breach of the rules, this would be attended to in the form of either objections or appeals. And Lizarat, the new rule that the list Electoral Committee came up with was that all appeals and objections should be made within 48 hours following the occurrence of the incident, so that the rest of the work is left to the PLCs and the Electoral Committee in terms of appeals. Because we really are hard-pressed to complete this task in order to meet the deadline of the 23rd of August. The rules also take into account that we are at alert level 3, and so we have to adhere to protocols. And so in the guidelines, it's made clear that an indoor meeting can only be attended by 50 people, and perhaps if it's an outdoor meeting, it would then be attended by 100 people. And so the guidelines allow for several meetings of that nature of the community, not to bring everybody all at once, but to stagger it and then to add the votes accordingly, so that we still adhere to the restrictions under the alert level 3. So the community still has to be afforded the opportunity to participate in the nomination. It's a very important step in the nomination and selection process here. Those were the questions.
DSG?
Okay, Lizeka, the staff member isn't telling lies. It's absolutely accurate. Our Treasurer General is doing everything in his power to raise money. So we have not paid July salaries yet. I have no idea when that's going to happen. And I don't want to make a public pronouncement, which I don't know about. We will be meeting our staff liaison committee tomorrow morning. We will have a discussion with our staff on these matters. We're very aware of the dire straits that our situation is putting a number of our staff members into. The people we employ are people who really live within a month of bankruptcy or not being able to cope, and we're trying everything we can to alleviate the situation that we find ourselves in. On the issue of, I'm not a planner. I don't know how to answer your question about what people will use ammunition and guns that they steal from the police from, except to say that is a clear criminal issue. And we're hoping that the law enforcement agencies will follow that without hesitation and make sure that people are arrested and followed up and taken to courts and dealt with. There's no indication in the statement issued by this Jacob Zuma, Free Jacob Zuma group that they want to go into any form of violence. They call it this time around peaceful. However, we are watching and we are concerned because in the last spate of such, it's not an SMS, it is a statement that was issued yesterday. I'm surprised that the media doesn't have it. In which they are calling to have a march in Pietermaritzburg and so on. We are only calling on people to desist from violence. We live in a democracy and everybody has a right to assemble, has the right to speak what they want to speak, but violence is not something we're going to stand by and tolerate. We have called on our communities already to make sure that a second phase is resisted in terms of what we did in the last one, for communities to stand up and say no to looting and no to violence, irrespective of who may be calling for it. Gavin and somebody else asked about the reshuffle. Yes, the president does consult. No, he hasn't called us as the top six for such a consultation as yet. When he does call us and he indicates, we will go and hear what his plans are. But at this moment, as I'm sitting here in my house, as you can see, I'm in my home. I've not been told that there should be, I should be making my way to anywhere. I think this idea that there will be a reshuffle on Friday comes from an SMS that was put out in the media. Now, I mean, I really honestly would like to help you, but I cannot help you at this stage. And you know that I don't, if I know something, I'll tell you. I just don't know. The ANC has not discussed calls for reshuffling. We have not discussed any call for the security cluster to be discussed in the ANC. If this is being discussed by individuals, I really cannot answer you on that, except to say that formally, the NWC did not have such a discussion, neither did the officials have such a discussion on Monday when we met. Thank you.
No, thank you, DSG. It doesn't look like we have got questions. Members of the media, if there are follow-up questions that they may want to ask, if they want to have a sit down with either the DSG or the DP on the work of the Electoral Committee or on the outcomes of the NWC, they are welcome to make such arrangements with the DIP, and we'll be able to coordinate, and if availability warrants, we'll be able to then advise them. Let me thank members of the media, thank the Deputy Secretary General and the head of our Electoral Committee for being able to clarify questions that the journalists may have had, including the most difficult ones, DSG. I know that some of the questions are hectic, but we tell it as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
to members of the media.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Pule. Thank you, Comrade Jasmine.
Thank you, Comrade Kgalema.
Thank you.
No, thanks.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Jasmine.
Thank you.
Thank you.